Right on.
Hey, how's it going? How you been?
Doing good. It's been a little while since we last talked.
Yeah, it's been a few months. Been a crazy couple months. More so busy last couple weeks. Um, you know, a lot of new market conditions, which have changed things quite a bit. But for those of you who don't know you, would you mind just giving me a quick intro on your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So the name I put on the chat, I didn't realize it was going to be displayed, but I'm Bernardo Gallegos, also known as Omni Prime, but I'm the staff advisor for UNM Esports. I'm a TA2 at UNM under the Information Technologies Department, and my designation is the main bookstore there. But I have been now, we'll be over a year and a half now, almost 2 years that we've been doing UNM Esports now at the university. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell right now.
Love it, love it. Well, obviously, I've heard your story a couple times just because we've had multiple interactions over the past year. But would you mind telling everyone a little bit how the University of New Mexico started their esports program and kind of where it's going to now? And I'd love to hear how the effects of the coronavirus have, kind of maybe positively or negatively impacted the space for you specifically.
Yeah, definitely. So UNM Sports started with three of us, two students and myself. Matter of fact, I happened to just have a nice, like, 4 to 5 hour walking meeting with a gentleman by the name of Matthew Lenz, who was also starting up NMSU Esports down south. And our president, who is now the previous president, Stephen Mejia, called around to the different institutions here in New Mexico and happened to get in touch with me. Matthew pointed him in my direction. His parents were moving in from Florida, and he was trying to find out who was doing esports in New Mexico. I had, again, that summer, just talked to Matt, told him I had intentions of finding students that were interested at UNM. Had an incoming student that was not from the area, and then another one who was a now graduated nuclear engineer, and Dieter Hambicki, and he is now, again, moving on with his more career life. But we got things rolling. We had those guys do all the proper paperwork. They were pre-chartered within weeks. And then now, after just a couple semesters, they've reorganized us into now a competitive club sport. So since we last talked, we're now officially recognized as a competitive club sport on campus, since we do compete against
Nice.
other institutions. We've been in front of the SVP, the provost, the deputy director of athletics, the athletic director at one point as well, and several deans now, where we're discussing our path to varsity. So that is the next steps that we're trying to take with UNM esports, and we're just, again, moving through this. And when it comes to the whole coronavirus, COVID-19, obviously gamers are a little more attuned to the idea of social distancing. So we've been leveraging that. We've been using Discord as our kind of main hub. So I can share links to our Discord, and our social media has been a chatter. We've also been taking some proactive steps to collaborate with. We have a tabletop club on UNM's campus now. They are
Wow.
Tabletop Tavern UNM, and we're going to be working with them to do some D&D remote sessions, where I'll actually be doing a little bit of training wheels, how to roll up a character, the very basics, getting people started. And then we're going to be looking at maybe teaching people how to DM in the future, and then be doing some, just, again, remote sessions, because the hashtag that's out there, Alone Together, speaks volumes. What we're really trying to do is keep morale high, and then look for every opportunity that we can to get people together socially, at the end of the day, maybe, or like in the weekend times. We also want to, just, again, to continue to be a resource for academic success for our students, trying to put them in the direction of talking to faculty members during this transition, talking to their advisors, their deans of their respective colleges, if they have any questions. But again, we also need to ensure that after the business and, like, the educational stuff's taken care of during the day, we want some, respite from this whole thing. We want some people to just have fun. We want to offer, a space where people can just, you know not necessarily tune out, but just enjoy their evening and enjoy their time with others. So that's what we're up to now.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about, so now the program is officially recognized on campus, and how many students are involved, and now they've expanded past just esports, moving to tabletop as well. Tell me, number of students, what's the engagement like? Have you guys had any recent sessions that have gone really well? I know I personally watched one of the live streams that you sent over to me about a month ago, and it was, the amount of viewership was impressive. It was like a couple thousand live viewers on the match. I think it was it Boise State that you were playing against?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty dramatic, the increase. But I'll start with this though. Tabletop Tavern UNM is their own sovereign student organization currently.
Hmm.
We are again. Being reorganized as a competitive club sport means that we're under the recreational services instead of the student activity center directly. We still work in tandem with both because we are still doing student outreach. We want, as the movement towards varsity changes us, we're still looking at doing things that are new and innovative, just like for example, not a lot of varsity sports on campuses are directly supported by a club. So I started to talk to SAC, started to talk to like athletics, trying to get some feelings on this because what we're hoping to do is we'll rebrand and reorganize once the varsity level thing happens in the future, that we will have a club that directly supports that and the fact that we can go from casual to competitive. And that's kind of the goal that we have there when it comes to the actual organization of the club. Um, Again, though, we have 150 identified students inside the Discord that are self-identifying as UNM students currently. That may change in the coming weeks depending on how things are going. Again, we're just waiting for. We're almost day by day. A lot of these organizations, a lot of these institutions are handling this differently across North America. We've seen some institutions just kind of call it for the semester, where UNM is still delivering their online courses for students. Those are starting up normally on Monday as is, and then they are going to be transforming in-person ones that are identified to be appropriate for online, and then any ones that cannot be adjusted to an online format in a time frame are going to be dropped, and then they will have options for those students to follow up. Again, I don't have those details. That'll be more of like the deans of different colleges. And again, like I said at the beginning of the stream, unm.edu/coronavirus has a lot of good details there on what they're doing to respond to that. But we do have healthy outreach. The Tabletop Tavern has talked to us about maybe future tense kind of conversations where we do a competitive gaming club, or even just a gaming club in general, where we do have TCGs like Magic the Gathering that are still both being played IRL, and now with Magic the Gathering Arena is becoming an esport. So we want to kind of encompass a lot of that different space. We feel that a lot of that group is, very much interwoven. So it makes natural sense to say, hey, we'll do casual to competitive. We're going to call it like the UNM Gaming Club, but we'll still have that support all the way up into the varsity like level of esports, and maybe even like semi-pro or like collegiate competitors for TCGs or tabletops. We learned that Catan can be played competitively, things like that. So we're learning as we go what other ways we can get involved outside of just like the digital realm. So again, that's been really fun. But again, I think Tabletop Tavern UNM as their own organization has, I think, a little over 40 students at last count, what I heard from their student president. And then we've got varsity competitors, and we're getting close to 50 now that we're going to be doing Call of Duty. I think now that Warzone's dropped, we're going to be possibly looking at some opportunities there. And then, of course, just start increasing our involvement to NMAA. We've been in close contact with APS Esports, so we're trying to do collaborations there where we can do remote coaching with varsity players who would be in a chat with the coach from some of the high schools during practice times to do just remote coaching it, and it kind of offers a perspective shift for those players. So some of those players who've never been coached that get to us at the collegiate level, and so this opportunity would grant them that perspective and to say, oh, that's why my coach is telling me like do this thing over here, or like, hey, I need you to listen to this. Like if they can take that role on as a coach themselves for like K-12 and for like seniors or any other group, that'll hopefully give them a little bit of insight to like, why is my coach on my behind about this stuff, like why do they keep really trying to drill me about this. So again, we're really experiencing what it means to have a varsity program with students who may not have actually been a part of a varsity program.
So tell me a bit more about the evolution, or I really guess the promotion of middle to high to college esports, right? And you talk about programs for scholarship. Does UNM currently offer any scholarship programs? And uh, if not, when are we going to see that start to come? And how does that look like when you're trying to recruit people? In state's one thing, right? It's fairly easy to keep those people in state, just because the tuition cost is so low for UNM and they have a great education at the college. But how are you guys going to start attracting people from out of state? Say, look, hey, we'll give you a full ride scholarship on an esports. Right? I know there are colleges doing that, but what is the University of New Mexico doing?
Well, I think you kind of said it there in the question too, which is like we would love to offer the full ride scholarship, obviously for every varsity component. The way and the rate at which we're rolling right now, we have a couple of big questions to answer. So, one is space. We do have a small 600 square foot area that has been gifted to us on campus that we're going to be developing for the initial lab space for our teams. Right now, obviously, because of the limited operations due to coronavirus COVID-19, we're putting a lot of things on hold. The second thing being supportability of the program. So with these programs, also as we've mentioned in previous conversations, and as other people in this industry are aware of, is a few years old now at the collegiate space. So attracting sponsors, like when there's, I don't know, what, 1,700 accredited schools or something like that in North America that are all going to start hitting like a few hundred actual, companies that are all in the same space, and it's going to be like, well, we can't sponsor all of you. So what we're looking is for some of the local established uh, footholds that some of those companies have in New Mexico and in Albuquerque to maybe have interest of that are endemic to esports. So we're looking at like the Facebook down in Los Lunas and Valencia County, looking at like the HP that's out there in Rio Rancho, which is actually, I believe, the National Omen Support Center, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken. And then Intel also lives in Rio Rancho. And again, we're just trying to see what's here. There's a lot of defense contractors with Kirtland Air Force Base being in our backyard, the Air Force Research Laboratory, Sandia, Lanel, things like that. So we're really being creative about how we can start to generate some of that income and that supportability from the outside in. A lot of those programs are looking for students that come out that will be STEM related or CS majors for all of those different areas. So we're seeing, of course, the obvious increased need for technological solutions right now. This has been something that a lot of us who've been in IT for many years have talked about when we do disaster avoidance or disaster recovery. We're tabletopping up to the point of like, well, what happens if site one is like no longer accessible? Like, how do we get to the data? How do we get to our business operations? How do we operate if we can't go into what we call work, like whatever that
Yeah.
location is? So the same thing applies to us, is that we're trying to think of creative ways to make contact with these local entities, a lot of these established entities as well. Like, so there's like the Dion's. Of course, the Frontier already has a great working relationship with UNM. So again, that's answering that question about like scholarship and supportability. So we are going to be looking actively now for the donors, looking through the Alumni Association, the Young Alumni Association. Um, Also with Anderson here on campus, the School of Business, which is very renowned throughout the world. There's a lot of brilliant minds there who we've been talking to and having conversations with about how we can take this opportunity, because if you look at traditional athletics, they go out usually through like a third party or somebody else to go get those sponsors
Mhm.
and big names out there. But again, what's wonderful about esports is that we do have endemic, markets that are naturally Fortune 500 companies. Like, you look at esports and technology, and it's like, okay, well, let me list off all the people who might be interested in sponsoring that kind of program. And you're really going to naturally find a lot of some of the top performing companies in the world with a lot of heavy interest in that. Like we've seen in the professional world, Honda doesn't make sponsorships by mistake. State Farm doesn't get involved with a lot of pro leagues and things by mistake. Like, these big name companies are coming to the table. And now that we've seen like the VCs come in, Call of Duty League got launched, Overwatch League is in its second year. Again, nothing really happens by mistake when you're talking about companies at that level and size. So, with that creativity in mind, I think we're going to be poised to really reach out and have a lot of great conversations once we get, again, further down the road past this whole current situation that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you think it's going to next? I mean, it's great to hear that the league at UNM has continued to grow. But barring the physical space and barring the equipment needed to do this, um, what's like your number one obstacle to make this a massive spectator sport where you can literally pack the stadium, it's pack the pit, right, or just like the one in Johnson Center, and get people to watch it, and have the budget to do so? Is it a matter of pure interest? Is it a matter, hey, how do you actually generate revenue? Because I mean, in my mind, right, you go to a volleyball game at UNM, they're going to generate revenue through tickets or through snacks or whatever, gear, right, like traditional
Hmm.
means. The exact same thing could be applied for esports, right? I mean, if you do a couple large screens up there and you threw it in the same facility, I mean, I imagine there'd be enough people within Albuquerque alone. I mean, Albuquerque's a fairly small city in comparison to others, but you could, I would imagine, be able to pack that facility. So what's preventing you from going to that next level?
So just to be honest, it's really the bureaucracy of a state-run entity, because UNM is a state institution, or state-funded, partially state-funded institution. We have to go through those channels. We have to get through that red tape. We're a very large, flagship university in the state of New Mexico. So having the agility like a UCI or a smaller institution, maybe like an Akron or other places, it becomes about getting the information and that long-term business plan in front of the people who matter, and the people who make those decisions that can see that long-term plan as well.
Hmm.
What we have been leaning on heavily is obviously the recruitment end of things. All institutions across the United States right now are having recruitment decline, even international recruitment and enrollment decline and international enrollment decline. And if we talk about something that's new and exciting and that touches on a bunch of different fields, I mean, you've probably seen it now that I know that we both connect through LinkedIn, and there's a lot of like awesome things going on there as a platform.
Yep.
Everybody's seen the web that came out of the UCI program that shows, players and games at the center, and then it blooms out. And then there's been another one that was just even more developed, where I literally I saw the UCI one, and then I started to have conversations with people, and I was like, yeah, I almost jokingly said like, yeah, I maybe can't connect like geology to esports. And then I'm like, wait a minute, like rare earth materials in order to make like actual like wafer boards and like circuits and like chips, like you need that. So yes, geology is actually connected to esports. So all those components that your controller or your keyboard and switches and all these things need, everything can almost be like immediately and directly connected to it. So that's what's exciting, is that it's endemic to all other industry that's existed before it. There, every single one of them can almost get involved, and we're not talking about just like STEM or STEAM. Like we are definitely talking about how there's way more going on, that's just beyond the players, the event, the spectator sport. Like the traditional model still stands, like you said. There's going to be a huge amount of the younger demographic that will absolutely show up for events, because we've seen that like EDCs and things like that out in the world, young people are into the experience, going somewhere, being a part of something. But we also see that others who are the traditional fans, who are a big fan of spectator sports, New Mexico United is still wildly successful. There was a lot of people planning on going to that home opener for NM United, and that was crushing to hear that, as this thing kind of started to take over locally, like you said, the market had to adjust, and now it's, adaptability at this point. So what we're doing to adapt in the short term is hosting in-house League of Legends tournaments. We're going to be talking to APS Esports here in Albuquerque about doing some game nights with students, and providing some sort of just entertainment value there, based around gaming. We're putting together a list of free-to-play and low-cost games for parents and students to take a look at.
That's great.
We're going to be looking at all platforms. So we're going to be looking at PC, so Steam, Xbox Live, PS, and mobile. So that way, even if they have smartphones or some other sort of platform, they can still have a list of things and for reference for what can I do now, what can I play now, what can I play with other people currently. So if you just even have like, your headset and a cell phone, you can still get connected with other players and people. Uh, Again, I think everything really shifted recently. So our focus went from 10, 15 down the road until, in the last like 2 weeks, we've literally gone to about 24 hours, I think, down the road. But we still haven't lost sight of that long term. We've still been having those conversations up until this point. In fact, until the Friday prior to a lot of this like lockdown and like limited operations on campus, we were slated to have really great conversations, including other folks on campus who are those ones that make those bigger decisions. But again, safety and priority to us is the student safety and faculty and staff on campus. So we had to put things aside, certain things aside, and now we're regrouping. Now that the actual spring break is ending, or if you will, the original spring break is ending, I have a lot of student leadership there at UNM Esports who want to know how we can get involved. We're looking for volunteer opportunities. We're disseminating information from the city of Albuquerque for that. But again, uh, the growth is almost exponential. Like once we get back into that groove, once we see people being able to get back out and about, like you said, traditionally and into these big spaces or places where they can go have an experience with each other, we're going to see, jerseys, hats, gear. Like, I mean, you're wearing a Dallas Fuel hat right now. So, like we said,
Yeah.
traditionally, a lot of that stuff stands, true. We would love to see developers be interested in doing, like, large conference skins for schools. That would be amazing. But as the whole of this country and this world is dealing with something, it's shifted a little bit. So I don't, as we talk, I'll try to touch on those, like those far ended, kind of things, because like I said, we're
Sure.
still very much looking down the road. But I think right now the focus has become more about what we can do to help others have some enjoyment and have some sense of normalcy right now.
Awesome. Well, Bernardo, hey, once again, thanks for your time. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. And I love hearing about what's happening at the university I attended, and being involved in such something I'm so passionate about. So, once again, thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
Hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Thank you.